recognize my good friend and your friend, Mike Lee, the senator from Utah. Mike, Senator.
Look, this is tyranny, and we've got to stop it. Out-of-control spending is causing all sorts of problems. For the average Utah family, it's costing about $1,000 a month more every single month just to live, just for basic monthly household expenses, relative to January of 2021. All this has come about as a result of excessive, out-of-control federal spending. And it's not limited to inflation. The inflation that it causes, the other forces set off other dynamics that result in things like the failure of Silicon Valley Bank. Just met with a whole room full of bankers just a couple of hours ago who acknowledged the fact that excessive federal spending resulted in other things that caused other things that resulted in that failure. And, you know, we have to be mindful of that. So this isn't just any ordinary debt ceiling increase. It's a debt ceiling increase that's come after more than 2 years of heavy inflation. Inflation that we were told at first was just short term. It was transitory. It turned out to be rather something not that, quite the opposite of that. This is a longer term problem for us now. It's going to cause all sorts of other problems. We've got to take it down. While we're on that note of any ordinary debt ceiling increase, keep in mind that over the last half century or so, we have raised the debt ceiling a number of times, and at least, I don't know, it's like 35, 40% of those times, there are conditions attached to it. It makes a lot of sense when you do that, just as when you were increasing, I don't know, your credit limit, your borrowing limit as a business, as an individual, as a family. You'd want to have some sort of plan to make sure that you kept it under control. When would be a more appropriate time to do that than now? And yet, all of a sudden, our Democratic leaders are pretending as if this is like apocalyptic stuff. This is Book of Revelation stuff. This is men and women, or dogs and cats living together in the streets. That we attach conditions to this. Of course, not acknowledging the fact that attaching conditions to a debt ceiling hike is not anything new. He then said that what those Republicans are trying to do is to cause a default. This is doubly wrong. Doubly wrong, first, because that is not a default. You can blow past the debt ceiling increase deadline, so to speak, and then it just means the government can't borrow more. Yes, that causes problems. Yes, we'd have to figure out what to cut, what to not cut. But that is not itself a default. It's a situation where we'd have to address something. We're not even suggesting that we do that without raising the debt ceiling. All we're saying is, let's deal with the conditions. Secondly, it's wrong for him to say that they're flirting with the default. They're trying to cause a default, because he's the one saying he won't accept any conditions, notwithstanding the fact that conditions have, for a long time, been a norm that we've often resorted to. Not enough, in my opinion, but we have resorted to them. So if what he's really saying is, we will refuse, if he really does believe that not raising it equals default, and if he's really saying he's willing to cause that kind of default as he's now defined it, then he's saying that he's willing to cause a default. I really applaud the people that I'm standing with here on this stage. These members of the House of Representatives who on their own initiative have gone out and done some very difficult work to try to figure out solutions for this moving forward. Among the other things that they've proposed doing, including capping spending levels, identifying areas where cuts need to be made, clawing back certain revenues, they've also addressed the fact that it's helpful to us when looking at our debt ceiling package to look at the revenue side, look at economic growth. What is it that we could do to promote economic growth? One of the greatest things we could do in that area is pass meaningful regulatory reforms like the REINS Act, which is what they've suggested that we do. The reason for that is most of our laws, measured by word length, volume, weight, economic regulatory impact, are not made by elected senators and representatives. No, they're made by unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats. This results from decades of Democrats and Republicans for both chambers proposing these laws that say we shall have good law in Area X, and we hereby give to Agency Y the power to make and interpret and enforce and adjudicate laws. This is tyranny. James Madison said in Federalist 62, it'll be of little benefit to the American people that their laws may be written by men of their own choosing, if those laws be so voluminous and complex they can't reasonably be read and understood by those subject to them. If the people can't even understand what the law is from day to day, we're there now. Last year's Federal Register, 99,000 pages long. Not only are those laws too voluminous, complex, and ever-changing to provide anyone any semblance of fair notice and due process, they are not even written by men and women of our own choosing. I applaud these brave men and women, and I stand with them.